We're now broadcasting.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Sunline Transit Agency meeting, along with our Sunline Services Group board meeting. We'll be doing this board meeting via teleconferencing and forward to a robust discussion. If we could all stand for the flag salute, and if we could get Mr. Russell Betts to lead us in the flag salute, and he has the flag, we would be appreciated.
Okay, please place your hand over your heart and join me in saluting our nation's flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Betts, for that. And we'll move on now to item number 3, which is the roll call. Ms. Hernandez.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Please respond when you hear your name to confirm your attendance for the record. Board Chair Miller, City of Indio.
Present.
Board Vice Chair Middleton, City of Palm Springs.
Present.
Board Member Ross, City of Cathedral City. Board Member Delgado, City of Coachella. Board Member Betts, City of Desert Hot Springs.
Present.
Board Member Reed, City of Indian Wells.
Present.
Board Member Alternate Pena, City of La Quinta.
Present.
Board Member Kelly, City of Palm Desert.
Here. Here.
Board Member Townsend, City of Rancho Mirage.
Here.
Supervisor Perez, County of Riverside. Thank you, everyone. A quorum of the board is present. Oh, Mr. Chair, you're on mute.
Am I on mute still?
There we go. We can hear you now.
Okay, I didn't see that was on mute. Thank you for that. We'll inform you if any of the other board members join us for the rest of the meeting. I will move on to item number 4. It's presentations. I think we have no presentations at this time.
None at this time, other than if any are present at the items.
Okay, and then number 5 is the finalization of the agenda, and there's no agenda items that need to be changed per the staff or anyone else.
No changes.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll move on to item number 6 now, which is the approval of minutes from the April 22nd, 2022 joint board meeting. Is there any questions from the board, or would somebody like to make a motion recommended?
Desert Hot Springs moves to approve the agenda or the minutes, excuse me.
Okay, can we have a second?
Rancho Mirage, second.
First by Desert Hot Springs, second by Rancho Mirage. Any discussion on this at all? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, anyone oppose or abstain? Okay, passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item number 7 now, which is public comments. I'll turn this over to our legal representation, Mr. Vale.
Thank you, Chair Miller. This item is for members of the public to comment on non-agenda items. Members of the public may address the board regarding any item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. However, no action will be taken on any non-agenda items. Comments shall be limited to matters not listed on the agenda. Members of the public may comment on any matter listed on the agenda at the time that the board considers that particular matter. Comments are limited to 3 minutes in length. We will be indicating a timer on members of the public's comments, and I will remind the speaker at the 3-minute mark that they need to close their comments. The board does reserve the right to stop comments at the 30-minute mark and continue comments over to the end of the meeting, should it become necessary to fulfill the board's obligation of orderly disposition of its business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vale. Mr. Hernandez, is there anybody that needs to speak at this time, or do we have anybody from the public that would like to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Before proceeding, I do want the record to reflect that Board Member Delgado has joined us.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And we have received 3 requests via email in advance to speak on non-agenda items.
Okay.
The 3 speakers are Mr. Anthony Garcia, Mr. Arturo Aguilar, and Mr. Joey Rake. And before moving forward, I would like to pause to see if there's anyone else on the attendee side that would like to provide public comments so that I may add them to the queue. If there is anyone, please press *9 or use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. Again, please press *9 or use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. And Mr. Chair, there is one person that is indicating they would also like to add public comment.
Okay, so we'll add that to the rest of the speakers, and then we'll move on. So go ahead and start.
Okay, and Mr. Anthony Garcia.
Can you hear me?
We
Yes,
can
we
hear
can.
you.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, board members and chair. My name is Anthony Garcia. I've been a driver at Sunline Transit for 26 years. I was recently put on administrative leave due to a YouTube podcast I host highlighting the bullying, harassment, and wrongful termination and how employees have been forced to resign due to the toxic work environment here created by Lauren Skiver. Lauren Skiver may say that we are not telling the truth. There are a few disgruntled employees. There are not just a few disgruntled employees. There are many, many employees with stories to tell about their mistreatment while employed by Sunline. Members of the board, you do not have to take my word for it. Research for yourself. Find out how many employees have left the agency since Lauren Skiver took over. Were they all incompetent? Better yet, if you really want to know truth, set up interviews with the past and current employees, offer immunity from retaliation and NDAs. I am not too confident that you will actually do that. We have set links and to the former videos and former employees telling their stories and how Lauren hires unqualified candidates to put them in top positions and offers no training to support, how she hires her friends and friends' husband, nepotism, how she breaks the law with illegal NDAs. Many employees have sued Sunline and Lauren does not seem to care because of taxpayers' money. It's not hers, but it does not appear that it concerns you. Employees have reached out directly to you in the past and you did nothing. We are crying out for help and justice and you to do help and you do nothing. May I remind you that this is a public agency. You have the responsibility to the community and taxpayers and to the people elected. I am here to request on behalf of myself and the employees that have been mistreated an independent investigation of Lauren Skiver, its leadership, and it's conducted an independent, that you conduct an independent for yourself, not affiliated with Lauren Skiver. While investigating is being conducted, put her on administrative leave. As employees, we have put up with enough. We are not going to be bullied or intimidated any longer. We respectfully ask once again for help. In addition, I would like to address the fact that the CEO will continually state that the agency can't afford to be as competitive as other agencies regarding pay, but because of smaller budgets, however, how is it that the agency continually affords to pay consultants $95 to well over $100 an hour? Please don't state it's covered through the grant funding because I've seen the agendas and nowhere on the checks over 1,000 does it state that the consultants are being paid with grant funds. Differences in vendors paid with grant funds. Public is under assumption that it's operating funds. I scrutinize the budget. Please do not approve the budget until every.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez, next one.
Next, we have Mr. Arturo Aguilar. Mr. Aguilar, can you hear us? If you can unmute yourself,
There we go. Let's try it now. How's that?
we can hear you.
Okay. I don't know how to get the picture, but that's fine. Okay. Hello, Mr. Chairman Miller, board members, CEO Skiver. My name is Arturo Aguilar, president and business agent of ATU Local 1277, which represents the 244 men and women who moved the Coachella Valley. In the last 2.5 years, our members have reported to work and have done their work, whether it's paratransit, MCOs, maintenance, or supervision, knowing that they may get sick or spread the virus with their families. The ATU has lost 220 members in the US and Canada, 13 members from our local 1277, and unfortunately, one from Sunline Transit. One is too many to me. I have not publicly made any comments about negotiations as our team is focused on negotiations. But I'm here today to simply say I am the business agent. I am focused on getting a contract done. Our negotiations team is ready and look forward to getting back to the table. Our members are united behind our process. ATU will continue to fight for our members. And also, please, if you can close this meeting honoring the 19 children and the 2 adults that were murdered yesterday in Texas. And also remind you, in transportation, it is an issue that goes on, as unfortunately tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of the murder of the 9 brothers that were killed at VTA in San Jose. And if we can close on both of those issues, I respectfully request. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Aguilar.
Next, we have Mr. Joey Rake.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, members of the board. Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Rake. I've been a employee for Sunline, for a driver for about 14, 15 years now. And I too have been placed on paid administrative leave for the comments and things that we make on our YouTube channel. We are bringing forth into light problems that we face at Sunline on a day-to-day basis with bullying within the top echelon of Sunline. We feel that our voice is going heard, and that's why we went to this motion with social media and YouTube, so that our voices can be heard, so that change can be made at Sunline. Sunline has been a powerful name, a wonderful place to work since 1977, but it's run inefficiently and poorly. The way that the employees are treated at Sunline, especially in the management and within the management, is unacceptable. And those people that are in those interviews need to be brought forth and should be interviewed by the transit board. This is what I respectively ask of you. We're being investigated. I think that the top echelon at Sunline should be investigated as well. I'd like to remind you that this is a public company. You are elected officials. You have a duly obligated duty to do this and to investigate and look into these problems at Sunline. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Okay. And next, we do have Valerie Diss. And Valerie, if you could unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Ms. Lauren and the board members. I don't know if Ms. Lauren's present, but I'm bringing an issue up that with the solution to the problem. So I just hope that you guys can address this issue. The issue is with the assaults, the spitting, and the groping of passengers on operators. Right now, the policy is if the operator experiences these type of assaults, that we just have to file the proper paperwork, and that particular operator is safe from that person. So we just want to do like RTA has a place and plan, and Omnitrans has a place and plan where they post the person's picture in the break room, the description, and they take their writing privileges away indefinitely. So hopefully you guys can address the people that are doing these things to us operators, so we can have a better and safer environment to work. We appreciate all the things that you guys do for us, and thank you and I just thank you for listening to me. And this is a big issue at Sunline Transit right now, is for us to just feel safe and not be stressed with those type of people that are riding our buses. Thank you again for listening to me, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Diss. We'll be looking into that. Is there anyone else, Ms. Hernandez, that would like to speak on public comments that's put their hand up or is out there?
Mr. Chair, there is no one else indicating that they wish to speak at this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, there's a phone number here. Just wanted the record to reflect that that's Board Member Alternate Pat Cooper, serving in Supervisor's place until Supervisor can join.
Okay, welcome, Pat. Thank you for filling in for the supervisor. With that, we'll move on to item number 8, which is board member comments. We'll start it with Cathedral City and work our way down to the County of Riverside. Is there anybody that would like to speak? You can go ahead and raise your hand if you would, if on any of the board member comments for anyone.
And Mr.
Hi.
Chair, Vice Chair Middleton has her
Oh.
hand raised.
Thank you. Lisa, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Glenn. With regard to the comments that we just received from Ms. Dis, I know that we're not in a position to respond immediately, but I would ask that we receive a report in the future regarding any and all actions that we can take to respond to these kinds of harassing incidents.
Thank you for your comments, Lisa. I'm sure Ms. Skiver and Mr. Vale will look into anything that needs to happen, and we'll go from there. Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? All right, with that, we'll move on to item number 9 now, which is consent calendar. There's items on the consent calendar from 9A to 9N. Is there anybody that'd like to pull any comments, or would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Rancho Mirage, to accept the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a first, we have a second.
Second, La Quinta.
Okay, we have a first by Rancho Mirage, second by La Quinta. All those in favor, they can say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed or abstains? All right, passes unanimously. We'll move on to item number 10 now, which is the purchase of 3 microtransit ADA accessible minivans. Russell, I take it the Finance Committee handled this?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the Finance and Audit Committee reviewed this purchase on the recommendation of staff, and after much discussion, the vote was unanimous to uphold the staff recommendation. So I'd make a motion to approve the purchase of 3 microtransit ADA accessible minivans.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Betts. Is there anybody that has any comments on this? That's a great addition to our fleet to be able to utilize these vans. Anyone else have any comments on that? It's already been.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
La Quinta.
Okay, didn't need a second, but thank you, John, for the motion. If there's no more discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anybody opposed or abstains? Nope, passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and we'll add those 3 to our fleet. Move on to item number 11 now, which is the award of the contract for security guard services. Mr. Betts, I take it you're handling this again, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we received a proposal presented by staff for award a contract for security guard services. Staff's gonna have to help me out. Was it for 4 years? Well, the staff will weigh in and let you know if it was 4 years or 3 years. What was it?
5.
5. Okay, I knew I got that wrong. Anyhow, we approved that, we reviewed it, and we unanimously voted to approve that. So I'd make a motion to approve the award of contract for security guard services as recommended by our staff.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. And is there any comments on this? I understand we went out to over 40 some different agencies that were security companies to be able to bid on this, and we got 5. So, and this is a different company, I take it, than the existing one we have now?
Well, you got
Yes.
more discussion than we did, so, but yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we appreciate that. Is there any comments or questions on item number 11, the award of the contract? All right, we have a motion by the Finance Committee. Do anybody have any more comments? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anybody opposed or abstain on item number 11? All right, thank you. Passes unanimously. We'll move on to item number 12, which is the Thousand Palms land acquisition. Russell, I know you're going to take this. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of comments on this, so go ahead and lead the way.
Yeah, originally there was another piece of land that the agency was looking at, but it turned out to have some issues. And so a new search was conducted, and I think it was approximately 5 acres was located bordering it's Ramon Road. It actually ends up being a much more favorable piece of land. The Finance and Audit Committee reviewed this, did have some extensive discussion on the configuration of land, what it's going to be used for, and some other questions. but in the end, the vote was unanimous to approve the purchase. And Mr. Chair, that's the report out of the committee. And I don't know if you said there'd be some other questions, so I guess we'll wait for those, but I'll make a motion to approve the purchase as recommended by staff.
All right, the Finance and Audit Committee have gone forward with approving this. Is there any questions on this? This is the piece of parcel that they're going to utilize for the basically the solar grid. I see Ms. Ross, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm just curious, kind of tell me a little bit about the property. Where on Ramon is it, and does it have infrastructure, and how much do you love it?
So basically, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, this is Rudy LaFleur, Chief Project Consultant. And the land is vacant. It is just north of our existing 1,000 Palms property. It is really advantageous to us about the regarding the proximity to Ramon Road and access, and the existence of certain underground utilities that were not available on the prior land that we were looking at.
Perfect. That's just what I was hoping you'd say. Sounds great.
Thank you. It's a great addition. Is there any other comments and questions for this? It's a $1.8 million purchase, but it's something that we've talked about for a while. Mr. LaFleur is here to answer any other questions. If not, we have a recommendation by the Finance Committee. If there's no more questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there anybody abstains or votes no? Pass unanimously. Thank you. Great to have this new addition, and look forward to getting the construction underway. With that, we'll move on to item number 13, was the adoption of resolution to continue teleconference meetings. Mr. Townsend, I take it you're handling this, or Mr. Vale will be helping you. So however would you like to handle it, sir?
Yeah, Mr. Miller, I would like to turn this over to Mr. Vale, who can fill you in on the conversations we had in our meeting.
Be happy to do so, sirs. Thank you. Board, this item, you'll remember, has been on your consent calendar. Assembly Bill 361 requires us to renew certain findings to continue to meet in a video virtual format. At your last meeting, one or more board members requested that this item be placed on your discussion portion of the agenda to see if you wanted to continue it, to see if you wanted to go back into all in-person meetings or some other format. Since that time, I can tell you that there've been 2 bills introduced into the assembly that would formalize either virtual meetings in whole or some hybrid variant of that and give the board more flexibility. However, they're only in the assembly committee and floor process. They haven't yet gone to the state senate. I don't anticipate that those are going to be signed before your next meeting or the next, but they are out there and we'll report back on that. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any additional questions about options that you might have, but this was an item placed for the board to have a discussion amongst its members.
Point of clarification, can you explain what we did? We took a vote, and if you could explain it, that'd be appreciated.
Thank you for that reminder, Board Member Reed. This was presented to the committee. The committee did unanimously want to make a recommendation that at this time the board simply continue with making the AB 361 findings and have a virtual meeting next month.
Yeah, this was the board operations committee that voted towards this. We did have a discussion back and forth. There are a few people that would like to have in-person meetings. I know it's difficult, we discussed it. And one of the big concerns we had is that some of us had our meetings at 9:30 in the morning, and we don't have another meeting until 12 to go into Sunline and turn around and come back or go do your other work was very inconvenient for a lot of us. And with a lot of our cities going dark or having limited meetings, we felt it was good at this time to continue on with what we have instead of changing it to in-person until we have an opportunity to look at some other stuff. So that's kind of where we went with that. Kathleen, go ahead.
Yes, thank you to the committee for having a full discussion. I support the committee's recommendation. the cases in our COVID cases per 100,000 in our county just jumped up from 14 to 18. Eventually, many of us have returned to in-person meetings for a variety of bodies upon which we serve. And that will happen for this group as well. But particularly given the number of staff who have to be drawn in to support our board meetings and the high importance of protecting the safety of staff in the face of the COVID challenges Sunline faces, I certainly support continuation of the status quo now and a thoughtful, patient approach until statistics are at least going in the correct direction instead of rapidly in the wrong direction. So thank you again to the committee. I support your recommendation.
Thank you, Kathleen. With that, if there's any other discussion, we talked about hybrid and that, but this is something we can take into on the next meeting if we want to. So is there anyone else that has, oh, Mr. Pena, I'm sorry. John, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think you just mentioned that. Was there any discussion of a hybrid approach? And you mentioned that there was, although I support the recommendation. I think that some agencies are going to a hybrid approach too. And that could certainly help in instances like you mentioned, where you have a 9:30 meeting and then the next one is until 12. So I would support moving forward with the recommendation and looking at hybrid approaches as well.
Well, good. We'll look at that next at our next meeting because it'll come back up again. And at that, if there's no other discussion, it's already been recommended by the Board Operations Committee. For all those, if there's no more discussion, we want to vote for the motion, say aye.
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 Is there anybody opposed or abstains? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Townsend and Vale for your comments and for helping with that. We'll move on to item number 14. Now is the upcoming election of officers. We're going to pull this over to Edith or Brittany, whoever's going to handle this, and it's an oral report. Take it away.
I will take this, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the board. The information item before you today is to advise the Board of Directors at the upcoming June 22nd board meeting. Nominations will be accepted to elect the chairperson and vice chairperson of the board. As a reminder, the agency's bylaws do not create an automatic advancement from vice chairperson to chairperson, and selection will be determined by a majority vote. No action will be taken on this item today, but will be before you next month for approval. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Is there any comments or questions for Ms. Hernandez on this? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, I see Supervisor Perez is joined us from taking over for Pat Cooper. Welcome, Supervisor. We're just talking about the upcoming election of officers. So if you're trying to gauge where you are, we're on item number 14.
Okay, thank you so much. I just got out of a meeting, Torres Martinez. I'm about to pull over right now and join you all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that was an informational item. With that, we'll move on to item number 15 now, which is the review and discussion of the Sunline funding and draft fiscal year 23 operating and capital budget. Russell, I understand you're taking this. I'm sure you're going to have quite a bit of staff help.
Well, I was going to do it all myself, but if the staff has to weigh in, that's no problem. Yeah, we had quite a lengthy discussion on this, and the Finance and Audit Committee thought it best for staff to give the full presentation to the board at this time, and so I will at this point defer to staff.
All righty, thank you, Mr. Betts. I was looking forward to your comments and breaking this down for us.
It would have been good.
Yes, it would. All right, who's handling this?
That would be me, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Luis Garcia, the Controller / Assistant CFO. And we will be providing a presentation today for you, which, as Mr. Betts mentioned, we went into greater detail in the Finance and Audit Committee. In accordance with the Sunline JPA, the board must approve an annual budget at the June board meeting. Staff was provided the draft budget today for the Finance and Audit discussion and review. The proposed operating and capital budgets for FY23 are $46 million and $25.4 respectively. The budgets for operating represent a sustainable 7.94% increase after the recognition of 1.8 million in funded projects, which help cover the costs needed to address industry-wide challenges such as recruitment and retention of employees, ridership recovery, and inflation. The capital budget incorporates key projects to help improve rider experience, improve the facilities and equipment for employees, as well as continue Sunline's investment in alternative fuel technology. With that quick introduction out of the way, I would like to introduce Gloria Salazar, our finance consultant, and she will be helping me with the presentation and take over the first part of this. Gloria?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gloria Salazar, former CFO and CEO of San Joaquin Regional Transit District, and it's my pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. And I know that you already know that you have a winning organization, and it's a pleasure to be here. You know, we're going through unusual times that we've been navigating through the past couple of years, but notwithstanding, there's a massive number and amount of activities happening in your organization. First, I would like to highlight some of Sunline's accomplishments so that even for a moment, we can celebrate your success and perhaps recognize you, the board, the executive officer, her management team, and the rest of the employees for your commitment to Sunline's mission and goals. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
The lifeblood of transit agencies is grants, and you were awarded $13.3 million worth of competitive grants for capital projects. I would like to emphasize that it's very difficult to be awarded competitive funding. The reason Sunline is successful in obtaining competitive grants is that you have positioned this organization at the forefront of innovation. But as important is that you have demonstrated the technical ability and capacity to deliver projects as you comply with the requirements of your funding agencies. And you demonstrate that through clean audits and reviews. Our industry, as you're aware, is highly regulated, highly reviewed, highly audited, and any major finding in this area may be a showstopper, meaning may stop the flow of revenues to Sunline. But because you have proven and you continue to prove your technical competence in handling local, state, and federal grants, that your revenues continue to flow in. And that is really something to celebrate. While we are in the early stages of recovering our ridership, a 7.2% overall increase is a signal and is showing that the early efforts of staff are heading in the right direction. Next slide. In FY 2022, Sunline completed 8 projects, a total of $16 million. These projects serve the needs of both our employees and the customers and are consistent with Sunline's mission and goals that include innovative transportation and alternative technologies, high quality transportation services that are safe, efficient, and effective. Next slide, please. On top of completing the 8 projects, staff began working on 12 projects with a total project cost of $7.3 million. Again, these are not random projects, but are meant to improve Sunline services, quality of your rolling stock, and infrastructure that are all intended for the employees and the customers. Now, my presentation is very simple. I'm simplifying the presentation, but I would like to mention that project administration and management in transit is not simple and it's not easy. While working to deliver the project, the members of your project team will also need to make sure that they comply with the requirements of each and every grant that is used to fund each and every project. And most of your projects are multi-funded. Staff will need to know and follow the rules and conditions of each funding source. And that includes scope, schedule adherence, procurement regulation. They need to make sure that their accounting records are auditable. They need to make sure that the allocation of revenues and expenses are accurate, and they need to make sure that the reports are timely and they're accurate. Again, your clean audits and reviews tell us that Sunline staff have been successful in performing these functions and complying with all these requirements. So again, kudos to your project team. Next slide, please. And as a result of your exemplary performance as a transit agency, you've been noticed and recognized through these 2 awards that the agency needs to be proud of. One is from a national association, and the other one is from the state of California. Both of these awards are a validation of your efforts as a team, as an agency. Next slide, please. And so they say, you know, it will be boring without challenges. And I just want to let you know that Sunline is not alone in the industry that's facing these common challenges. Recruitment is a national crisis. We're fortunate, though, that we are in a collaborative industry. As we speak, this is a hot topic being discussed by CEOs, general managers, and HR professionals throughout the country. This means that this collaborative thought process will come up with creative ideas on how to manage this problem. Another universal challenge in the industry is ridership decline. Again, every community is different and is approaching this based on the uniqueness of their community and the characteristics of their community's ridership. And of course, inflation, we feel it all, right? We all feel inflation. This is one thing that we need to manage, not just to respond to, but to make careful decisions that will not compromise the sustainability of Sunline's operation. Next slide, please. So for 2023, we're going to amp up our recruitment efforts. We will invest in training to retain and develop our employees, and perhaps, if practical and reasonable, after careful evaluations, outsource some of the functions that will sustain and provide value to Sunline's operation. And Sunline recognizes data-based business decision. Okay, therefore, we will continue to evaluate our data to know our community better, to be aware of the changes in the travel patterns, behavior, and preferences of our riders, and be nimble to the needs of our community. And lastly, more than ever, we will continue to be critical and diligent in allocating our financial resources for every decision that we make. So with that, Luis will continue on the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we went over this presentation in greater detail at the Finance and Audit Committee, and recognition of everybody's time here and the fact that we have a full agenda. I'll try to highlight the important aspects of the presentation as I finalize it here. So with this slide here, we can see the current FY22 operating budget at $41 million. The proposed FY23 operating budget there you see at $46 million, $85,646 is the amount that I referenced earlier in my introduction to the presentation, which includes the 1.8 million in funded projects, which again, once we net out those funded initiatives, equates to a 7.94% increase in the budget compared to FY22. On the table there, you can see the base budget at the 44.2 million, and then the 1.8 million in the funded initiatives beneath that, which all equate to the $46 million proposed operating budget. I would like to highlight that this includes initiatives such as service improvements for the Route 1X, which will improve riders, the ridership experience and give additional options, but also includes progress on other agency key programs such as the Center of Excellence, which provides training in alternative fuel technologies for the industry, which demonstrates the agency's focus on not only pursuing capital grant competitive funding, but also operating when possible. Next slide, please. Here, I'd like to highlight the fact that the proposed FY23 operating budget is both sustainable and compliant. Obviously, that's very important to note when we're looking at a budget. I will discuss this in a little more detail on a future slide. It's also important to put the proposed FY23 operating budget into perspective because of the uncertainties over the last couple of years. Sunline has essentially remained constant with zero growth in its budget over the last 3 years. Over FY20, 21, and 22, the agency has only increased its budget expenditures by 0.4%. Although there are still specific uncertainties, it's important for the agency to utilize subsidies allocated for the purpose of public transportation to improve service for our riders. Next slide, please. Here we can see our expense summary, obviously in major categories here. Sunline is in the service industry. We do not make a product, we provide a service for the public. And as such, the vast majority of our expenses are in wage and fringe. You can see there 65%. For FY23, we obviously had to make certain assumptions for wages to provide a proposed FY23 budget. I would again like to highlight that the funded initiatives are baked into the FY23 budget proposal. So initiatives such as the Sunride and the Center of Excellence are included in the services section of the pie chart there. And other services such as the Route 1X are included in wage and fringe. needed to run the service, as well as consumables such as fuel and tires. Next slide, please. Here we can see in more detail on the expense categories, and I'd like to highlight some of the larger variances here. The second one being services. You can see that was a 29.5% increase, or $1.2 million. The primary increase for the services is related to the Center of Excellence training, as well as the expansion of the new microtransit service areas, which you'll see in our short-range transit plan. Again, both of which are funded initiatives. The next line item down at 24.2% increase is the materials and supplies needed to maintain our aging fleet. It's important to note that this is related to one accomplishment, that the agency was able to win a competitive program for the rehabilitation of our aging vehicles in order to align with the agency's board-approved ICT plan that will require agencies to go zero emission by 2040, and in which Sunline will try to exceed that goal by being zero emission by 2035. In alignment with these comments, the final category at the bottom there at 56.5% increase will be other expenses related to technical assistance needed to support Sunline's continued services in obtaining these competitive grants. Next slide, please. Here, we will start to go over our revenue portion of the organization. We just looked at the expenses. This pie chart shows the summary of our revenues, and that will be needed to support the expenses. We can see there's three major categories: LTF, Measure A, and FTA funding. I would like to note that this is a more normal distribution for our revenues pre-COVID. The last couple of years have been subsidized more heavily on the federal side because of the emergency COVID response funding that has been allocated to transit agencies across the nation. I would like to note also, going through this budget and consulting with Gloria, that's a very normal funding distribution for any transit agency. Next slide, please. Here, I'd like to go in a little bit more detail on the revenue and subsidies. As I've shown in a previous slide, LTF is a big contributor to our operating budget, and as such is a big portion of ensuring that our proposal is sustainable. And kind of going back to my point in the earlier slide, we can see that our LTF request is $24 million at the top right there. And the estimate from RCTC is $23.4 million for FY23. We know RCTC's estimates are conservative, and we know through experience that the request for FY23 is very realistic, as we believe that the revised numbers and actuals for FY23 next year from RCTC will either meet or exceed the $24 million that we're projecting for next fiscal year. Again, it's important to utilize the funding that is for its intended purposes, and we were able to balance the budget with a very realistic LTF value. Next slide, please. Now we will be moving on to the capital budget portion of the presentation. Here you can see that kind of the combination of what I have expressed in previous slides of Sunline's aggressive pursuit of available funding for capital purposes. We were able to be awarded $13.2 million in recent awards for capital purchases, and that is being added to our capital program next fiscal year, which I can go over in the next slide. And again, it shows Sunline's continued investment into zero emission technologies, but also most importantly, improving the experience for riders, as well as equipment and facilities for staff. And again, these are additions to the existing capital program. Next slide, please. Here you can see the proposed new projects to the capital program. I won't go over all of these in detail, but we will highlight the second from the top there. You can see is over-the-road hydrogen fuel cell coach. It's one of its first of its kind that was completely funded from Cal STA. And you can see the fourth one down there, we see Cng Rehab. That goes back to my comment on the rehabilitation of our existing vehicles, as well as the purchase of 4 additional hydrogen vehicles. That was a bus and bus facilities grant that the agency was recently awarded that we will be programming for next fiscal year. Next slide, please. Here you can see the proposed capital budget by funding source. You can see the largest portion there is 5339. That's a federal source at 41%. related to the bus and bus facilities grant that the agency was awarded. We also see CalSTA's a large portion at 19% for the over-the-road coach that was also competitively awarded. And then the Sunline, State Transit Assistance STA funds at 21%, which represents state funding that is formula funds in which Sunline uses to match a lot of these federal awards. Next slide, please. For the next steps of this budget presentation, there's no action required on the budget today. Again, this is just a discussion item. We went over questions that the Finance Committee may have that I can answer any questions here that the rest of the board may have. If necessary, we will allow time for a special Finance and Audit Committee prior to the June board meeting to go over any additional questions if there is a requirement. The ultimate goal is to approve the FY23 budget at the June 22nd board meeting next month. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Appreciate that very much. Very informative, very exciting on the grants and the CIP projects and everything you put together along with the help of your staff. So congratulations. Mr. Betts, did you want to jump in here since this is your committee?
I just wanted to say that concludes my report.
On top of it, any questions or comments on it? Obviously, it's a large budget. We've had only a little bit of time to look at it. It's pretty comparable to what we've had, except we've had some expansion on capital improvement and some of our other line items. But we'll have another crack at this in, I see you want to speak, Charlie, in June. So Charlie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just have, I don't know, a silly question, but referring to the new buses, what happens to the old buses? Are they sold off or just destroyed or what?
We typically take them to an auction site that will take care of the selling and transfer of the asset. More recently, some of the awards that we have gotten require that they be disposed of in a very particular manner in order to comply with the grantor's request to take the old vehicles off the road and replace them with zero emission vehicles. But those are the two general categories at this point.
Very good. I appreciate that. Just curious. Thank you. Thanks, Glenn.
Lisa?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment that during the committee meeting, staff was very responsive to a number of questions regarding the ability to improve and upgrade the quality of services that we're providing in this budget gives us that opportunity to move forward. So really pleased with the direction that we're going.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. We'll look forward to seeing the full budget. Yes, sir. Mr. Betts.
Yeah, on the bus shelters, I saw we had 300,000 budgeted, if that's correct. And I don't know where if that's an expansion of where we were, but there's certainly a need for more shelters, especially in this climate. I know every time we don't put one in somewhere, somebody's saying, hey, I'm there, I'm roasting. Is that something that we can look at to see, or we could get before the next meeting, get a detail on what's planned on those shelters, where they go, and maybe if there's some type of upgrades we could make to the shelters that would make them more inhabitable or hospitable to these climates that we're in?
So in our individual SRTPs, we did give that information to each city about what's planned in their jurisdiction. And if you're looking to see it as a whole, we can certainly send that to the board. That's something that we're currently looking at. But as we heard from the board today, we're also looking at the types and service provisions that we're going to be doing desert-wide, valley-wide. And so we're taking the look at where are our fixed routes and what frequencies are they going to be at? Where will we be serving with ride share so that we can look at the different types of amenities that are going to need to be put out there? So I think that to answer the question specifically, we are looking at that amount budgeted, but we're also taking a look at service provision and where we're going to be offering fixed route service, where we're going to be offering more flexible services like ride share, to ensure we're not putting bus stops in that at some point may be served by a more flexible service.
Okay, and I did see that information you provided earlier and reviewed it, and it was good. I guess I'm making the pitch for, as it fits into our plans to offer a little bit more funding on something I've seen that needs it. Thank you,
We'd
Mr. Chair.
certainly be interested in working with all the cities. We're currently working with 3 cities now on TCC grants that are all about improvements in transit and transit facilities. So if your city is interested in working with us in that route, we're happy to help.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, like I said, we'll have another crack at this in June. Does anybody else have any questions of staff, Lauren, or anybody else? All right, thank you. And if you have any comments, you can relay them to Mr. Garcia or Lauren. If you have any other comments, or Ms. Salazar, or whoever it might be, to maybe initiate those to have some more discussion on them if you think of things later. With that, that was an oral discussion. So we'll move on to item number 16 now, is the review and discussion of the draft fiscal year 23 through 25 short range transit plan, the STIP. I know Mr. Ratty's not here, so I'm sure staff will take this, or who the vice chair is. So who's going to handle this?
Mr. Chair, I'll take a crack at it since I chaired that committee meeting.
Okay, thank you, John.
We did review it and have discussion on the short range transit plan. That will be coming before the board next month. Staff is available for questions should you have any questions regarding the plan, but we did have a little lively discussion on what's included in short-term plan, and we support it.
Okay, thank you. Brittany, did you have something you were adding to it, or anybody? Any comments? Any comments or questions on this? That's pretty specific. So it's just an oral report. If there's anyone else has any other discussions and comments, staff is available for that. So if there's no other discussions, we'll move on to item number 17 now, into review and discussion of Sunline's regulatory administrative draft fiscal year 23 budget. Mr. Townsend, it says that you're in charge of this. I'm sure you're going to punt.
I'm going to punt.
So is this Mr. Garcia? Are you handling this, sir?
Yes, that would be. Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, members of the board, in accordance with the SSG JPA, the board must approve an annual budget for SSG as well. As we have done in the past, staff has prepared a draft budget for discussion today and approval at the June board meeting. The budget for FY23 is balanced to expected revenues that align with the fee schedule reviewed with the taxi operators and approved by the board in March 2022. I will now go over a brief presentation on the FY23 proposed budget. And again, this item was reviewed in greater detail with the taxi committee. Next slide, please. I'd first like to just go over the budget overview here. As you can see, we have a balanced budget. As I had mentioned, the total expenses and revenues both tie out to $187,200. This fulfills Sunline's SRA's regulatory responsibility while limiting costs as much as possible to keep fees fair and reasonable for the taxi operators. In comparison to the FY22 budget, we are seeing a $12,000 increase in the budget. Next slide, please. I also think it's important to highlight some of the achievements for SRA related to the fiscal year 2022 before going into the expenses and revenues for the next fiscal year. The staff was able to provide assistance to the taxi industry, and knowing that these efforts will continue into the next fiscal year. One of them being Sunride. That was a new program for us for Sunline Transit Agency, and the full implementation of this program was seen in fiscal year 2022, which allows some additional revenue to the taxi operators. The SRA team also provided assistance to the taxi operators throughout COVID to help alleviate some of the burdens that they were experiencing, and also hosted events such as a virtual open house event for the drivers. Next slide, please. Here we can see that the revenues for SRA are pretty much dependent on two major sources, one of them being the taxi business fee that is required in order to operate within the Coachella Valley, assessed to the 3 current taxi operators. And the second being the vehicle permit fees, which allows certain vehicles to operate within our jurisdiction. Next slide, please. Here we can see our expenses into general categories similar to Sunline Transit Agency. SRA is major goals and functions is as a support role and also oversight for the taxi within the Coachella Valley. So again, they're primarily driven by wage and fringe, which for fiscal year 22 will be reduced to one full-time employee. However, will include costs allocated from Sunline Transit Agency in order to support their initiatives and their services for the upcoming fiscal year. And next slide, please. With that, that concludes my report. Again, there's no action item on this report either. This was a discussion item. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have. And we will be bringing this forward for approval at the June board meeting.
Any questions of Mr. Garcia? This was part of the taxi committee. The budget's gone down quite a bit over the years since I first got on Sunline many years ago. So that's a bare minimum on all this, but the taxi committee went forward, and we'll get another crack at this in June when we bring up all the rest of the budgets and there's STIP plan and everything else. So any comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, we do have Javier on the attendee side that would like to speak on this non-agenda item or the agenda item.
Please.
And Javier, you can unmute yourself. Mr. Chair, he is not responsive. Javier, if you can hear us, go ahead and unmute yourself. Your controls have been switched.
What's the command to unmute? Do we know that?
We have given Javier permission to speak.
*6.
Javier, do you still wish to provide comment? You can also use the chat box.
So I take it you can see him, he's just not responding to us, and you've given him all the instructions to *6 and that, and also the opportunity. And I don't see anything in the chat either, at least I don't as of now.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. He does have his hand raised. His controls have been switched.
Give him another second, try one more time. If not, then we'll move on and give him an opportunity at another time.
And Javier, your controls have been switched. If you can hear me, you can go ahead and unmute yourself or press *6 to provide comment. Mr. Chair, no response from Javier in the chat box.
Just let it be noted that we tried to allow him to speak when he was not able to for whatever reason. And
perhaps we can encourage him to send the email message to the clerk for distribution, since no action will be taken on this item until next month.
If you could do that, go ahead, Mr. Hernandez, send him maybe in the chat. You know, obviously he's there, and see what we can do about moving that forward. Thank you, Kathleen, for that. With that, there's no more comments because this is a discussion item. We'll move on to the general counsel's report.
Thank you, Chair. In light of the fact that we still have 3 closed session items, I'm going to defer any of the comments until next month. I don't have anything urgent for the committee or for the board this afternoon, so we'll hold over fine until your next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vale. With that, we'll move on to our CEO, General Manager, Ms. Skiver. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to highlight one area, Mr. Chair, members of the board. There are multiple social media posts claiming corruption and unsafe practices at Sunline. I want to ensure that the public, our riders, and employees know that Sunline is committed to the safety of our full scope of transportation services. Our maintenance and safety employees and their departments are just one element of the dedicated team that diligently work to ensure our vehicles are safe and properly maintained. Allegations that our transit service is unsafe or that our teams are cutting corners are unsubstantiated. Questions and complaints are processed, and there are multiple avenues for employees or riders to notify Sunline of concerns. Unsupported allegations of corruption and illegal activity have serious consequences and will be investigated and prosecuted if necessary. I fully support all members of my management team, as well as the men and women dedicated to providing safe transportation options to the Coachella Valley. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Skiver, for your comments. And with that, we'll move on to item number 20 now, which is closed session. This is all the board members do have a separate login. We'll be going there. Mr. Vale, do you have any instructions that you'd like to announce before we head over to closed session?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just need to announce the title of the 3 actions. There will be a conference with the labor negotiator is the first item. There's a conference with legal counsel with regard to 1 item of anticipated litigation. And then the final item is a public employee performance evaluation. These will all be held in closed session. If there's any member of the public who has a comment on these items, they could make it at this time. If not, you are free to recess into closed session.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez, is there anybody that is looking to speak or has put their hand up to speak?
And Mr. Chair, I have no one indicating that they wish to speak at this time.
Okay, just check one more time to make sure, and from there we'll go into move into closed session.
And I have no raised hands at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then we'll adjourn to closed session for the 3 items, and then from there we will come back out, report out of closed session, and adjourn our meeting. See you on the closed session site. Edith, we still have a few more people need to come back in.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're just waiting on a few board members.
I think we have a quorum.
Just want to make sure that we have everybody that needs to be here. Okay, we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, we have a quorum. All right. Welcome everyone back from the Sunline board meeting closed session. We will be reporting from our closed session. Mr. Vail, do you have anything you'd like to report?
I do. The board did meet in closed session with regard to the first two items, the conference with labor negotiator and conference with legal counsel. While they did receive briefing and direction, there was no other reportable action. On the final item, which was public employee performance evaluation, the board did request that staff send out a notice to any of the board members who have not completed their evaluation yet, provide any assistance as might be, retabulate the results, provide those to general counsel, and then general counsel will provide all of those to the board members. And thereafter, the board chair will work with staff to do a special meeting just with regard to the continued public performance evaluation. And with that, that is all the reportable action and ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vail. Thank you for your support. This will then move on to our next item, which is 21, which is our next meeting. It is June 22nd, 2022, 12 p.m. for our regular meeting, but we will have a special meeting that will be announced prior to the special meeting for the evaluation of our CEO, President Lauren Skiver. So at this time, I'd like to adjourn the meeting in honor of so many brave people who continue to support our nation, and in the loss of life of the 19 people in Texas who were unfortunately taken from us, along with the rest of the violence that has been happening throughout the United States and the world, and have a moment of silence in honor of all of them and memory of them, and God bless their souls. So if we could have a moment of silence for all those, it would be appreciated. All right, thank you. And with that, please all be safe. God bless you. And we will adjourn this meeting at 1:45 until our next scheduled meeting. But in the meantime, we will have a special meeting for the one evaluation of our CEO, General Manager Lauren Skiver. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.